Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, good whatever time it is, wherever you are, whoever you are. Welcome once again to Nerd Week Live, the show in which we, the folks at Nerd Caliber, talk about nerd news that have happened over the past week since our last show last Tuesday. I'm Rodney Brown. I'm the editor-in-chief of Nerd Caliber, first-person shooter on Facebook and Instagram as a cosplay photographer, Burley_adopter on Twitter, maybe a couple of other places doing some other things. Tonight we have a very interesting roster. If you've seen the thumbnail, you know what's coming up in the last topic. So stay tuned for that. But before we jump into the nerd news itself, let's first talk about our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/nerdcaliber. If you have a Twitch account, we'd love to have you go there, check it out, maybe follow us. We are live streaming on there right now, in addition to Facebook Live and YouTube. So, definitely check it out if you would, and consider becoming a subscriber or follower, what have you. Looking to increase our viewership on Twitch somewhere to the levels that we have on Facebook Live and on YouTube. So, joining us already in the chat, Luminous, hello, welcome to the show. If you do have any comments out there, folks, about our opinions or my opinion on anything that we're talking about, or obviously your own opinions about the subjects, please throw them in the comments. We love to read them. We do comment on them live, assuming we don't have to hide you for saying awful things, which, happens every now and then. So, let's get into our very first topic. This is, of course, two of the cast members of Justice League. We've got Flash there, Ezra Miller, and, of course, Jason Momoa as Aquaman. The news is about the DC movie universe under Warner Brothers Discovery, and the news that, as Deadline tried to report about a week ago, or in contrast to what Deadline tried to report about a week ago, Daniel Lin, who they said was basically on a very short list to be the, quote, Kevin Feige of DC products at Warner Brothers Discovery, ain't going to be doing that. Now, you got to give props to Deadline for basically saying, hey, we were wrong. But when that story first broke, it was before last week's show, and I didn't include it on the roster because even for Deadline, and I've said this a bunch of times, there are some industry insider trade publications or websites that I consider to be pretty safe to post rumors from. Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and Deadline is definitely one of them. But that article, they did more to sort of hedge their own bets about saying that Lin was, close to a deal than they do in most things. So for that reason, and the fact that it's Warner Brothers Discovery, so Lord only knows what sort of... it's like they're throwing darts at a wall and going, yep, that's going to be a smart decision and will save us money or make us money. So who knows what, Zaslav and the people at Warner Brothers Discovery are thinking at any time. So I went, you know what? I'm going to hold off on this one. I don't think this is going to happen. And sure enough, it turns out it didn't. Now, Lin is, he has experience working for Warner Brothers and doing DC content in a way. He was the producer that shepherded the entire Lego franchise, all Lego movies under Warner Brothers. That he was in control of making sure all of those had a consistent theme and tone and so on. So, it does sound kind of like this would be a smart thing to bring him on. According to this article, the problem mainly was the fact that Lin has his own production company called Rideback, and it has a first look deal at Universal for upcoming projects. To be able to get out of that deal, Rideback would no longer have to be an independent entity. If Warner Brothers Discovery bought it, all contracts are, up for grabs. And that seemed to be the sticking point, according to this article, that Warner Brothers Discovery was not interested in acquiring Lin's studio just to get Lin. I think, and I have no way of knowing whether this is true or not, but Warner Brothers Discovery and Zaslav's own quote was they were looking for a, quote, Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige's been with Marvel for a very long time, and he didn't state very clearly which Kevin Feige he was looking for. My guess is Lin wanted to be more like the current Kevin Feige, chief creative officer of everything having to do with Marvel, as opposed to, I would assume, Warner Brothers Discovery probably wanted him to be more like pre-2007 Feige. No actual position or title of overriding control, but still recognized as sort of like the number 2 man at Marvel Studios when it comes to making, large-scale production decisions. I'm guessing that those are 2 vastly different financial compensation packages in Kevin Feige's career, separated by 15 to 16 years as they were. So, yeah. It basically seems like it boils down to finances. They didn't want to buy his production company, and maybe they didn't want to pay him what he thought he should be getting in a kind of role that he thought they needed to control or run Feige-esque the DC content at Warner Brothers Discovery. So he's out. That's it. Not going to happen. They're still looking. Good luck to them. As a fan of DC, I'm sick and tired of their movies just sucking so much. In comparison to Marvel stuff, being so incredibly inconsistent. They have gems. Shazam was a gem. They have absolute dogs. Sorry that it made $1 billion. I'm not sorry. I mean, yay for the people who were involved. It made $1 billion, but Aquaman sucked. So, yeah. It would be great if they had somebody who could, in fact, do a Feige for DC at Warner Brothers Discovery. Whether or not Zaslav would let that person have the level of control that Feige has and not be micromanaged by, somebody who thinks that, the Duggars is good TV content, who knows. So, anyway. Fingers crossed to whoever is brave enough to take on this role. But it ain't going to be Daniel Lin. All right, moving on to our next topic. This is wonderful, wonderful, wonderful news. This is, of course, the first time we are about to see who is Star-Lord in the What If Disney Plus Marvel series. And, of course, we all know now that it was Chadwick Bozeman as T'Challa in a What If T'Challa was Star-Lord. The news is that Bozeman won a posthumous Creative Arts Emmy for Outstanding Character Voiceover Work for his work as T'Challa in What If, in this particular episode. Up against Jessica Walter, which would also have been a posthumous award for Archer, F. Murray Abraham for Moon Knight, which was technically, it's a live-action show, but his work was voiceover as Khonshu. Julie Andrews for Bridgerton. Julie Andrews. Maya Rudolph for Big Mouth, who's won it in the past 2 years running. Stanley Tucci for Central Park, and Jeffrey Wright, also from What If, from all What If, because he was the Watcher. So, thumbs up to Bozeman's family and friends who get to, at least celebrate to some extent this, recognition of, yet one more recognition of his amazing, insane talent. I feel bad that this is the last thing we're ever going to have that is new. But I said that back when we did our in memoriam, and, we'll just have to enjoy it, for what it was. But yeah, so Chadwick Bozeman, Creative Arts Emmy. Also taking a Creative Arts Emmy, and absolutely 100% deserving it, and way more than it actually did win. Arcane, the Netflix series Arcane, won Best Animated Program at the Creative Arts Emmys, and this is the first time a streaming show has picked up the award. Big Mouth and BoJack Horseman have both been nominated in the past. Jordan T., welcome to the show. Sadly, Jordan's second. Not first. Luminous was first. But second is good. Unless, of course, you're a fan of Ricky Bobby, who says if you ain't first, you're last. Anyway, Arcane picked up the the best animated program award. This goes hand in hand with awards that it was announced that it was going to receive this back on the 2nd and 3rd. This was announced weeks ago when we did a story on it, that it also won these juried selections. The juried selections in the Creative Arts Emmys are voted on not by the overall Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, but specifically by the people, Jordan sadly not actually first, by the people in those fields like animation, costume design, hairstyling, makeup, and motion design. And Arcane's Anne-Laure Toe, I'm butchering the name, she's French, my apologies, for the episode Boy Savior won Color Script Artist Award, which is a role I have no idea what that is, but congratulations. So Arcane took 2 Emmys in the Creative Arts Emmys, and probably should have taken way more than that. If you have not seen this, I don't play League of Legends. My experience with any of the characters of the world or anything like that is taking cosplayer photos. That's it. I know enough about the characters to be able to identify mostly a character if they walk by me and shout out the character's name to come get a photo. And that's it. So I went into Arcane with no preconceived notions of the content and kind of a preconceived notion about Riot, because Riot was really the first video game company that got called out for its terrible, terrible internal work behavior. And Arcane is one of the best animated products I've ever seen, period. Hands down, full stop. It is completely different in every aspect of design and tone and everything else you can possibly think of from a Studio Ghibli movie, but it is as good as the best of the Studio Ghibli movies in writing, in animation, in voice acting. If you have not seen Arcane, assuming it's still on Netflix, and I can't imagine why they would take it off, go watch it. It's brilliant. It got Best Animated Program, and it probably should have won a lot more. Speaking of award winners, although not for this role, sadly, the news is Ben Kingsley is going to be recreating yet again Trevor Slattery, the not really Mandarin from Iron Man 3, and the friend of Morris, I guess, from Shang-Chi. He's going to be playing Trevor Slattery in the upcoming Wonder Man series, according to a report on Variety. So again, inside sources. This isn't confirmed by Marvel. Marvel's usually doesn't confirm this sort of stuff until they're ready to make their announcement. D23 and Friday. But yeah, I think Variety is a reliable source, and so I'm going to call this one a pretty solid rumor. I was excited. So Wonder Man is mostly a late 60s, early 70s, I guess into the 80s, where some terrible things happened, comic book fans' character. After that, he's a side character at best. But he was a fascinating character. One of his most important arcs was he tried to be a Hollywood actor, which worked out well because it set up, or it was part of the reason of setting up the West Coast Avengers. But he didn't exactly do that well at it. Ultimately, he became just a sort of a super-powered, invulnerable stuntman. And that kind of really works with Trevor Slattery, who is obviously a failed, an actor with serious problems. So I think that indicates, and the Variety article also calls this out, that the Wonder Man series, at least part of it, is going to be set in or take place during Wonder Man's attempt at being a movie star, which means that it could be really a very sarcastic take on inside Hollywood. And I think that would be hilarious. I don't think they're ever going to be quite as funny as the versions of that in like Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, which just put the knives into the back of Hollywood and twisted and twisted and twisted, and it was hilarious. I don't think that anything on Disney Plus is going to be able to get away with that kind of stuff, but I do hope that it's in tone at least close to that biting sarcasm. But if it's not, if it's a straight up adventure show, Simon Williams, Wonder Man, has an awful lot in his backstory. Now, they've taken away the big part of his backstory, which is how he is connected to the creation of Vision, because he's not what should have been Simon Williams's neural patterns in creating Vision's robotic mind, or android mind, in the MCU, or took from Tony Stark. So, that part of his very interesting and complicated backstory is gone. But there are other aspects of his character and his backstory that are very interesting. And they could still figure out a way to tie him into Vision, which I think would be great, because it would also be able to... The White Vision first appeared in West Coast Avengers. So, are we going to get to see White Vision in the Wonder Man series whenever it happens? No. At least we're going to get Trevor, and I'm 100% okay with that. I know I mentioned award-winning. Of course, Ben Kingsley has won an Oscar for Gandhi, has been nominated multiple times, including for one of the most disturbing performances you can imagine in the movie Sexy Beast. If you've not seen it, you can't really picture Ben Kingsley being one of the most frightening gang thug enforcers you've ever seen, but boy is he. He really pulls it off. Another recommendation, folks, completely outside of nerdery, has nothing to do with nerd content at all. But if you like character study gangster movies, like The Long Good Friday, and so on, Sexy Beast is brilliant. I use that term again. Is awesome. Let's use that term. All right, moving on from Trevor Slattery and Wonder Man, we get to Harley Quinn. The news here is that Harley Quinn has been 2 weeks before its season 3 finale renewed for a season 4. So obviously, HBO Max loves this. Warner Brothers Discovery hasn't stepped in to crap all over it yet, so yay, thank God. The current showrunners are leaving, but they are being replaced by Sarah Peters, who has been a writer on the series since the very first season. And apparently, this is a choice that the current showrunners, Justin Halpern and Patrick Schumacher, are very pleased with. So I think that's great. I think it indicates that there isn't going to be any kind of a shift in this, which is good. Zaslav does know that, money talks, and this is one of the most popular things on HBO Max right now. So, yeah. Honestly, I 100% anticipate that at some point Zaslav is going to either try to screw this up or get rid of the series. Because it's a foul-mouthed series about, 2 lesbians. Now, that's not in Discovery's wheelhouse, folks. But again, I don't want to really just dump too much on Warner Brothers Discovery. We've done that in previous episodes. And this is a good thing. This is a plus for HBO Max. Let's look at it that way. You're going to get a season 4 of Harley Quinn. So, yay. Good for you, HBO Max, for understanding where your money works, and not doing something stupid like, axing this like you did two other DC projects, Batgirl and Batman the Caped Crusader. I said I wasn't going to be dumping on Warner Brothers, but here I am again. It's just so easy because they're just so bad at it. Anyway, Harley Quinn Season 4 will be coming. Good for HBO Max. All right, I'm rushing through this. I'm the only one that's talking to this, and we've only got 6 topics. So let's get to the last one where this is going to take a little bit of explaining. This is an image from the book that was just published in July, the Astral Adventurer's Guide, which is a book in Wizards of the Coast, and therefore D&D's they're bringing it back, of reinvigorating their space magic adventure setting, Spelljammers, which dates all the way back to 1982. They created this. It wasn't really a hit. They did put a fair amount of effort into it, but it was just not something that was typical D&D. It wasn't fantasy. Well, it was space fantasy. You cruise around in what are like sailing ships through space, and it's a little weird. But here's an example. This is how old this thing is. Like I said, it's 1982. This is from 1992. This is one of the collectible cards that D&D back then, before Wizards of the Coast had it, put out for the Spelljammer series of this alien race, alien species called the Hadazi. The story here is that Wizards of the Coast and D&D published their new book with the basic information about the Hadazi just taken completely from, if not exactly the 1982 version, at least the latest, like early 90s update of it, without really checking on it, and then created new artwork for it for the book, which is the image that you saw before. The problem is two big problems. The Hadazi, as originally written about and as published in the Astral Adventurer's Guide back in July, are described as, let's bring up the original image so you can really see them, a primate-like or simian-like race. You can see very monkey-like looking beings, who only gained intelligence, or sapience as they called it, because they were basically forced into slavery to work aboard these sailing ships that are the default way of getting around in this universe. And nobody there at Wizards of the Coast thought to look at the fact that you've got a monkey-looking species that's developed its sapience, its improvement by being slaves, and the implications of what that means in modern times. They got called out on it. Ivan, oh damn, that's some H.P. Lovecraft level racist race background. Wait till I talk about how they doubled down on that, or not doubled down on it. They just made an even worse mistake. So let's get back to the image. This is the image that's in the book. This is the new image versus that really ganky. And by the way, this is the kind of stuff that I had to live with in the early D&D books, and what they thought was professional grade art. Anyway, let's get back to this. So you've got different classes here. You've obviously got some sort of warrior type. I'm guessing that's a monk in the middle with a sort of hand-to-hand look status. And you've got obviously a bard there on the end. The problem is that bard is almost exactly pose, expression, and even instrument, a mandolin, not a guitar or anything else, a mandolin, the spitting image of artwork on the sheet music from an early 20th century minstrel show. I'm not going to post up that image. If you want to go look at it, you can. It's pretty easy to find on Google. The race is Hadoze, Hadozee, or Hadoze. And find it yourself. There's no way I'm going to post up an image from a minstrel show on this show. So, sorry about that. But either take my word for it or go look it up. It's really... The lifted leg is a little higher, and of course the minstrel isn't holding an apple in his, foot that can work like a hand. That's kind of the differences. And looks like a minstrel. It's shocking. I mean, I don't know anything about the artist and whether or not the artist used that as a reference. I mean, you've got a dancing minstrel class, bard class. That kind of fits D&D. But boy, is it close. So I'm not saying that the artist had that in mind. That we're not casting, aspersions upon the artist, not saying anything about them being racist. What Wizards of the Coast and D&D did is they put the written content out and this image without ever vetting it. And boy, did they get called out on it. Now, to their credit, well, first, they wiped out all references to the slavery aspect of the Hadoze in their online D&D Beyond without saying anything about it. But that image was still up there. Very quickly, later on that same day, this happened on the 2nd, on Friday, very quickly, they put out a statement and absolutely fell on their own sword. We wanted to acknowledge and own the inclusion of offensive material within our recent Spelljammer Adventures in Space content. We failed you, our players and our fans, and we are truly sorry. Good for them. They have scrubbed the images and the references from D&D and D&D Beyond. They will not include that in any of the upcoming published Spelljammer material. The books are still out there that did get published in the first wave. They're not recalling them as far as I've read up to this point. But, I'm pretty sure that there's a bunch of people who are sending a whole bunch of messages out to gaming stores and bookstores saying, hey, can you just, pretend that never came in? And if that's the case, let's hope that some of those bookstores and gaming stores and whatever listen. There's no reason to have this content out there. Sure, 30 years from now, somebody could post up on, whatever direct into your brain version of eBay there is and say, hey, look, I've got the 2022 first publishing of the really racist, Astral Adventurer's Guide. Look, and I'm selling it for $1,500, I would say dollars, but it'll probably be Dogecoin. Anyway. So, if you remember, either from our show or reading any of this stuff earlier, Wizards of the Coast has had a problem with this stuff. D&D has, because it was created so long ago, in the mid-70s, D&D has had a, let's call it at best, an insensitivity problem. And in some cases, sadly with Gygax's own descendants, a straight-up racism problem. So they've been having to fight this now that it started getting called out a couple of years ago, for a few years. And they did a pretty good job with cleaning things up, with putting out new books that had updated guides on how you should treat the concept of evil as not inherently a racial characteristic. There should not be a race that is inherently evil. And which, of course, is, in contrast to a lot of the depictions of some of the races which were, savage and evil. Like, okay. Yeah, that's... Nowadays, we would call that barely coded racism. Whether that's what it was back then, my guess is, and again, I don't know, is that the writers, whether it was Gygax or the people after Gygax, that was sort of their institutional knowledge, as it were. That was what their society was like. There were savages, and savages could be completely evil in their minds. So Wizards of the Coast really deserves a fair amount of credit for owning this mistake, and really deserves a big dope slap for making it in the first place. Now, quality control. Somebody at a final decision editorial level for all of their content going forward needs to be essentially a diversity officer. That slows down the publication of books by a couple of days or even a couple of weeks. That means you're not losing X, dollars of company value by people who will never buy your stuff anymore because you made a dumb mistake that looks racist. So, not that you're listening, Wizards of the Coast, but if you are, take that suggestion. Have a diversity level officer be a final sign-off before anything goes to publication. Heavily inspired by Lord of the Rings, Gygax had plenty of evil races because that's how the races were always used in stories. This is from Ivan again. It's understandable in the 70s, but I'm assuming but not acceptable today. Yeah. That's a good point. I mean, Lord of the Rings has races that are evil, like the orcs, but even then, the orcs were created by an evil god to be evil things. The orcs are not... They are now, because there's no way around it, but they weren't a naturally evolved... Well, it's the Lord of the Rings. Nothing was naturally evolved. All races were created by a god. So I guess that's not a good analogy. I probably should just stop with that analogy right out of the gate. You can't attribute any reasonable sort of cultural or scientific expectations out of anything that was, created by, gods and just, suddenly appeared in, far eastern Middle Earth or wherever they appeared, for the elves or, dwarves or what have you. So, yeah, never mind that. Good point. They were evil beings because they needed to be evil. And again, I don't mind the idea that there can be something that is inherently evil. Combining it in any way with other terms that makes it sound like you're talking about an analogy for actual groups of humans, that's a problem. So, yeah. Wizard, get this fixed. Don't do this again. It's dumb. Hire somebody to literally go through all of your content that you might at some point want to republish and find out where the problems are. And fix them and get rid of them in advance. Make it a marketing play, and you can actually say, hey, by the way, we've discovered a lot of these things, so we're not going forward with this in the next edition of blank when it comes out. This problematic bit of content is not going to be there anymore. It's a win for everybody. You get to clean up something, you get to use it as a marketing play, and we don't have to deal with this crap. So let's not deal with it. So get that fixed. All right, folks, that's it. Like it's a shorter show tonight because I'm on by myself, but thank you all for joining me in the chat. Jordan, Luminous, Ivan, always a pleasure. Before we go, as always, once again, let's talk about Patreon. Let's find out where my mouse cursor is. Here it is. That's a problem with having two large monitors. Patreon.com/nerdcaliber is our Patreon URL. We'd love to have you check it out. We'd love to have you be a patron if you would like to support us, help us get to more cons. Speaking of cons, we will be at Granite State Comic Con coming up in 2 weekends. Not this coming weekend, the weekend after that. But this coming weekend, we will have Adam will be at Colossal Con East. Let's see, we've got content going up from Emerald City Comic Con from last weekend very soon. We've got content going up from Dragon Con. Emerald City Comic Con 2 weekends ago. Dragon Con last weekend coming up very soon on the website. So you'll see all sorts of stuff. It's the fall. Things are going to get crazy. If you're going to those cons, please wear a mask. Be safe. Do the smart and responsible thing. I was at Pop Cult Anime Con 2 weekends ago, and I wore a mask the entire time. Most attendees did. It was just shy of a guarantee. Ivan asks, will you be at Super Mega Fest at the end of the month? No. I like Super Mega Fest. I'm not going to a con that has Vic Mignogna at it. That's an easy choice. But folks, mask up. Yeah, Luminous, thank you. Mask up. And I've already had a report of the many friends I've had at Dragon Con. They're all back. One of them already tested positive for COVID. And if you've been reading, the gestation rates for BA5 and BA 4.6, which is the newest thing, are even faster than the 2 days that they've been saying before. So, yeah. I anticipate lots and lots of my friends posting that on Facebook or Instagram. Their little, not pregnancy test. And I hope they're all going to be safe. They may very well have worn a mask. I would hope they did at something like Dragon Con, but I've seen tons of photos from Dragon Con of people who were not wearing masks. So wear a mask, folks. Don't get COVID. Your brain will thank me and you. Again, just go read all of the latest studies about multiple instances of COVID, even if they're not serious. Significant impacts on the size of your brain matter. Don't lose brain cells, please. Wear a mask so you don't lose brain cells. Anyway, that's enough for this rant. Thank you very much. We will see you at an upcoming show or at an upcoming